Welcome and hello to this week's webinar. I am so excited to personally welcome everyone to this session. My name is Kelly Cristaldi, and I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Virtuous, and I will be helping facilitate today's conversation with Erik Tomalis, who is a wonderful coworker of mine, as well as Nic from Fundraise Up. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping rules. There's always just three here. It's very easy. First and foremost, today we want to make sure that we're all collaborating and chatting and talking. That's one of my favorite things about when we host webinars here at Virtuous is the great networking and collaboration. So make sure that your chat pane is set to everyone. If you're unable to attend this session, or if you'd like to pass along to a colleague, this session is being recorded and a recap will be sent out tomorrow. And lastly, we're just really excited that you're here. But joining me today is Nic Miller, who's the head of product experience at Fundraise Up, and of course, our very own Erik Tomalis, who is our director of business development. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hey Kelly, thanks for having me.
Hey Kelly, how are you?
Doing good. I will let y'all take it away, but before we do so, why don't you go ahead and let the audience know a little bit about yourselves, your roles at each of our individual companies, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure, I'll kick us off. I'm Nic Miller. I'm the head of product experience here at Fundraise Up. I have been with our company, about 3 years now, and have moved through a few different roles. So my knowledge has become quite well-rounded in the customer experience for folks who are fundraising using tools like Fundraise Up and Virtuous. And my experience has also taken me, I would say the full gamut of fundraising. In a previous life, I was a head of annual giving at a university. So I would say earned my stripes in that regard. And, now in my current role, I'm really excited to get to work with organizations like the ones that are on this call today to help raise more money and increase engagement from donors. Over to you, Erik.
All right, thanks, Nic. Yeah, like you, Nic, I'm also a former fundraiser and spent my entire career, over 20 years, on the front lines, both as a major gift officer, chief development officer, some health systems, big and small, and most recently just came over to Virtuous about 2 years ago on the other side to be able to self-support as many nonprofits as I can. My background mostly is major gifts. So I've made over 4,000 face-to-face visits in my career, which is really cool because I get to see a lot of cool donors and provide a lot of impact. But now I get to help our nonprofits grow generosity here at Virtuous by sharing some type of solutions that I've never seen before, in our space.
Awesome. That's really exciting. So heaven knows we have a lot of experience here to share with everyone today, which is awesome. We do, of course, have just a really quick agenda. This is a really quick 30-minute lunchtime session. So every good conversation has a little bit of a plan behind it. So really quickly for today's agenda, we're going to be covering, what to consider when you're deciding to buy or build your fundraising stack, which is a really exciting topic these days because there is just so many different products and platforms on the market these days. We'll have a couple of key takeaways that we'll cover at the end, but of course we'll have a Q&A. So don't let this be an opportunity to wait until the end of today's session. If you have a question that either Nic or Erik bring up during today's chat, drop it in the chat and we'll get to it. Again, we love conversation here, so please be a part of it today. So fellas, I will let you take it away, but if you'd like, I can kick us off with a couple starter questions.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds good. So
my voice went like pitched up high. That'd be great.
Just tips up a little bit. So let's start off with kind of an easy one here. So whether it's your CRM, marketing software, online giving platform, or anything else, what are some signs that you're starting to see an organization is outgrowing the existing technology?
That's a great question. You want to go, Nic? Or you want me to?
You can kick us off, Erik, and then I'll fill in on my side.
It's interesting. It's like there's a couple of things. Like when I went to a couple of my organizations, I inherited these technologies. I looked at them. There was previous predecessors that were saying, hey, this is what I wanted to use. Whether it was the system or the campaign or the technique or the standard operating procedure internally, I knew I needed to do some type of audit, right? Because when we had 500 records or made $1 million, whatever it was, and now we're at 5 million and a lot larger, that's when I wanted to be able to say, hey, I wanted to take the training wheels off and start going fast. And so, especially when you get into a new organization, it's always best. And one thing why I'm here at Virtuous and doing what we do is I never did that. In my first 10, 15 years in my career, Nick and I were talking about this a couple of weeks or earlier this week, was like, I never did an audit. And I feel like we as organizations should do an audit on a regular basis. Technology is constantly changing, and we should always take heedance of what we've got here locally.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Erik, because, for most organizations, especially younger organizations that are really bootstrapping their operations, inevitably you will probably start with something that you have created. For a lot of people, that might be something like an Excel workbook or a Google spreadsheet. But it is important to, somewhere along the line, insert that audit, because otherwise you might just continue using these tools. And what happens is sometimes people will create workarounds for themselves to continue using these tools. They're like, oh, well, this is just how it works. It's very cumbersome, but we just spend a few extra hours and eventually we complete the task. But as you grow, if you insert these tech stack audits into your organization's operations, at some point you realize, okay, maybe now we have the budget, maybe now we have the people power to move from something that we created just to get by to a tool that is now purpose built for what we need to accomplish.
Totally agree with you. And I think it's beyond all, our technologies are similar and we overlap and we integrate. We can sell our products as all day long, but there's a lot of other great products out there. And, and I'm very big on believing that, there's so many different things. I don't want this to be a sale, if you will, but like, I think back in my day was, to your point, it was like, I did Excel spreadsheets to manage my grants, to manage my gift pipeline. I had a whiteboard in my office of all the foundations we wanted to go after. But what would happen, if something happened to our building, burned down, or, I won the lottery and I went somewhere else? That technology audit is important for us to continue to grow and keep our organization going in the right direction. And you and I were talking about this too. My favorite thing is we always say nonprofits, we always do things differently in my organization versus your organization. But the reality is all of us as nonprofits do the exact same thing on a regular basis. I'm out there raising money, doing annual fund, doing major gifts, doing grants. And the only thing different is our mission, our impact, and how much we're raising, the decimal point, right? Yeah. So let's lean in on our peers and our others that are around us of what are doing it very well.
That's a very good level set, for everybody who's tuning in. And maybe you find yourselves in a similar position where you're sitting at your desk or you're sitting in a group and it comes up, our donors are just that much more different, or our organization is just that more different from, the others out there, that our operations, we do things a different way.
Yeah.
But the reality, like you're saying, Erik, is that we almost all operate the same. We might have some different ways of referring to things, but at the end of the day, the mechanics underneath the surface are essentially the same. And so, one of the things that I tell people is that instead of trying to find software or a solution that is going to fit exactly your mold and do exactly, operationally what it is that your organization does, try to understand what some of the standardized approaches are, because there are tried and true approaches to major gifts, to small fundraising in general, memberships, and so on and so forth. And so if you can reshape or rethink the way that you operate and put it in these types of frameworks, I mean, not only does it make your life 100 times easier, and it makes it easier to pull other people in as you move around the organization or move out of an organization, it also makes it much easier to adopt software that will help you scale up your operations.
And you said something earlier that I think is just spot on. I want us to like have that conversation around it is, going through, an audit, making sure we have the budget to fund it. A lot of organizations are always, bootstrapped on what their budget is. And the hard thing is we have to think, yeah, sure, we work for nonprofits, right? But we don't get paid nonprofit salaries. We have to act like a for-profit business. And how do for-profit businesses grow? Is they take chances, they lean forward, they do audits, they invest in their organization in some capacity. So we do have to invest in newer technologies to make us more efficient so that we're not always bootstrapping and doing 50 jobs.
Yeah.
What can we do to invest in ourselves to have that we know the ROI is going to happen in the future?
Exactly. It's a key business practice that, even looking at our company, Fundraise Up, as an example, as we have grown over the past 5 years, we've actually just completed our own, CRM migration from HubSpot, which was a phenomenal tool for us to use at a smaller scale, to graduating to Salesforce. And I mean, this is a journey that probably, too many people attending today are familiar with, having that conversation about, okay, it's time to move to Salesforce. It's time to move to Virtuous. It's time to upgrade.
Yep.
And it can be scary to think about, but there is value that sometimes, takes a little while to reveal itself. And it's in the simplification of operations and the ease of use. And again, just thinking about how a nonprofit should look at its very staff. If you want to bring in the best talent, oftentimes you're going to need tools or processes that people are familiar with and come to the table already knowing how to use.
Well, just your journey going from HubSpot to Salesforce, right? From your business unit, right? And we were talking about how some organizations are creating their own systems, their donor pages, whatever it might be. I look at it from just the security. It was like knowing that there's a big company that's doing this product on a daily basis, that they're the subject matter experts. They know what the industry averages are. They're working with many other nonprofits. That those things matter to be able to lean into a Virtuous, because rather than building your own system here locally, right?
Yes. And I would say that comes a little bit too late in the thought process sometimes, because immediately on paper, we look at something like an Access database or a Google spreadsheet, and we say, this is going to fit the need. This will work. This will do what we need. And it isn't until sometimes it's too late. Somebody deletes the file, somebody overwrites some information in the table, or some other catastrophe occurs, that you realize how important it is and was to have a system in place that has redundancies built in, has all of those modern security features baked in, that it's not just something to sell you on the product. These are actual things that make your life as an organization better and safer.
Well, truth bomb alert. Here's a real experience that I have currently. So I was the chief development officer for the Boy Scouts here in Western Pennsylvania for a number of years. We had a very archaic system that was in place. All the different technologies believe it or not, none of them worked together. None of them communicated to each other. Shocker, right? So I created my own workarounds and created my own documents. And when I left the organization, you have to leave it in a better spot, right? That's the rule of the Boy Scouts, when you leave no trace and when you're hiking towards the whole thing, right? And so I left it better. I'm a longtime volunteer, donor, and everything. Took my thumb drive, gave it to the Scout executive. I watched her load it onto their OneDrive, whatever their document system is. I'm still a donor and I'm still chairing a couple committees. Their chief development officer just called me this morning and was like, "Where are your files? Where are they? I can't find them." It's been 2 or 3 years. And it's that's the reality of these organizations. And we need to grow. And like you said, you need to lean in and do those automation and out there.
Excellent points. Love that. I want to flip the tables a little bit, because we've been talking a lot about auditing, things to consider, making sure that we're not forcing puzzle pieces together just to fit things, look at best practice. And of course, a really big one is, let's look at long-term as well. Sometimes I feel like we've kind of talked about this too, is we're so siloed and focused on this pinpoint now moment, instead of what's going to happen to my organization 5-10 years. We want to grow, double our generosity, we want to double our staff to help empower communities. Let's pick solutions that are going to help make that happen. But On the flip side, like let's put ourselves in the role of the fundraiser, which Erik, I know that you have a wealth of experience in. If you're the fundraiser, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see when you're talking to a vendor for a new platform, whether that be CRM, fundraising, enablement? What are some really key mistakes you're like, oh, maybe that's kind of not the greatest. Maybe that is a red flag for us.
Don't take the first phone call. I mean, how many times sitting in that chair, we get inundated with messages and marketing communication and emails and phone calls, and like, do the audit, look around. There's a lot of great systems out there and there's a lot of opportunity, but find the time to do it, because that's the biggest challenge we have is we're focused on our budget season. Our board is on our throats to raise more money than we did last year. And they're only looking year over year. They're not looking at lifetime value of donors. And so we as leaders, and they should be as strategic leaders, looking at where we're going. And so that's how we can create some of those efficiencies to be able to lead in on that future of where we want to get to.
I would say it's no small feat, right? That's kind of the mindset you have to come to the table with when you're evaluating, you're either choosing to build something or buy something, or having already built something, looking to now scale up to something that you pull off the shelf.
Yeah,
it's a big deal, and you don't want to, like you're saying, Erik, just go with the first option that you find. Maybe in the end that first one was the best fit, but take the time to evaluate these different platforms, take the time to have these conversations. And one of the things that we talk to our prospective customers about is how to, even after you switch, how to scale up from there. Because again, it's a big deal to move from something that you may have built to something that you buy. And it can be very overwhelming to like buy the whole thing all at once and turn everything on all at once. Like that's stressful. And so, even with our own practices, we evaluate with people, what's the best way to get started? Are we going to roll this out for one campaign and, make sure everybody's comfortable with how this works, make sure everyone understands the technology, how the reporting will work? And that's oftentimes the best move, instead of saying, okay, we're going to turn everything on, it's going to be perfect, and you're just going to there's going to be no hitches, no drama, no frustration. So one of the things that, even in our evaluation of vendors that I appreciate is when the person on the other end of the phone call is more interested in problem solving for us, rather than just saying, you know what, this is the solution, here it is. Have a nice day, sign on the dotted line. It's better if you can work with vendors and people, consultants even, and agencies that are really interested and focused on your strategy and your success.
Totally agree. It's interesting too. Like the other thing I think through is your point, Nic, is I do a lot of conferences, and we do exhibits, and and everything else. And one of the things I recognize is that exhibit hall has more experience than a lot of our nonprofit leaders today in this space. And I mean this as the politest way as possible, because like we're going through this resignation, the great migration, whatever it might be, and everyone's coming to other sides. But like, it's not a vendor client relationship. It's a partnership. And so when you can lean in and do those problem solving opportunities to complement one another, like you're referencing, it's game changing. And so like, I always reference, like when folks go to conferences as an attendee, talk to people, go out there. Like that's the whole point of taking advantage. Our time is limited as fundraisers, and like we're being focused on that year-end budget. But like, if you're going to a conference, talk to as many people as you can. If you do as much of your research, but it's just like, it's self-help, right? We do it for ourselves, do it for your organization as well, go and be able to, do that mental check.
Yeah. And one of the key values of choosing to partner with, in our case, like software companies that have created something for you to use, is that it does allow you to take that very small amount of time that you already have, because what fundraiser out there isn't wearing 50 different hats,
right?
And it allows you to remove from the time suck, the time that's required to build and maintain something that you have created yourself. Yeah. And in this way, it truly is a partnership, because as a fundraiser, you're looking at your technology partner and saying, I trust you to create and maintain software for me that's going to help me do my job better. And my job then will be to engage more donors, and from those donors, raise more money. And if my focus as a fundraiser can be solely on those two areas, then that's a major win for the organization.
I relate, like, so my buddies over at Next After, like, they just had their conference, and one of my favorite things, they just go full immersion in, like, you know, a theme, and they did the Wizard of Oz of, you know, the optimization and everything. And I think through the Tin Man, right? Like, we started fundraising because we wanted to do impact and focus on the heart of the mission and everything else. But along the journey, we lost our heart. We started focusing on the revenue. Then we didn't get together. And so we got to bring back the heart and focus on and let other things make us better fundraisers.
Yeah. And to kind of tie this back to an earlier point about like having that audit or that gut check, if you as an organization find yourself sitting around, you know, the meeting table, and most of the conversation has shifted from the relationships that you're building and the calls you're going to make and the visits you're going to make to, well, you know, we got to spend a lot of time doing database cleanup, like all hands on deck. We've got to like reassign all these values for these records because something got fudged somewhere along the line. Then you know something is wrong, because you're now spending too much time on the back of office infrastructure stuff and less time on the really important stuff, which is the relationship building, the stewardship, and the engagement piece.
Great.
Absolutely. And y'all are hitting upon something there too that's really key when looking at your technology, whether it's auditing, moving, getting started, is that partnership with consultants. That it can be anybody, like consultants to help you audit. I mean, I remember being a fundraiser, and I'm sure others like on this call, you'll have alluded to wearing 50 hats, and to task somebody and say, let's audit our software is a Herculean effort. Like, that is a full-time job for somebody. So if you don't have that space, because, you know, we're all working towards the mission, bringing in a consultant is an excellent way to help you audit your software, maybe even help you do that preliminary research and be a part of discovery and demo calls too, because they have that really good expertise status and knowledge, but also long afterwards too. If you are, you know, like for Nic, for Fundraise Up, bringing in a consultant to help you get started with those first round of campaigns, give you best practices, even, you know, maybe optimizing them for your organization, that's huge. That's something that your team is then able to, in a trustworthy way, say, they've got it. They've got like our mission and our goals at heart, and they're going to help us get there. Staff can then facilitate in other areas. So I think bringing in consultants is just an excellent third partner in creating your ultimate tech stack. We only
totally agree, because I want to hit one point on the user, on the CDO side. I was a big fan of bringing in consultants for everything, whether it's a campaign or a technology audit, whatever it is, because it's the middle between the consultant and the board. You know, it was my protector of the job of saying, hey, I'm going to have someone who's a subject matter expert help me, and then be the facilitator between the two. And it was just that barrier. Plus, the great thing about a consultant is they can lean up a mirror to our organization and tell the real truth to both the board as well as our team of how great our data or how terrible our data is, right? So it's just I agree with you on that, Kelly.
We only have a couple minutes left, but I did want to at least leave us with one last question before seeing anybody had questions is, do either of y'all have predictions about the future of nonprofit tech? Where are we going? Where we might see changes? What's in the crystal ball per se?
Yes. Erik, can I kick us off with this?
Yeah, 100%. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll start very high level and say the future is very exciting for nonprofit technology. And, you know, if we look at the evolution of technology as a whole, not just related to nonprofits, we've seen amazing progress over the past several years. And one of the examples I like to talk about is Stripe, the payment processor. And the way I look at it is that Stripe did for the payments industry what Apple Computer did for the personal computer, and that they essentially democratized it. They made it easy to access. They made it friendly. And I'll take that as a theme and apply it to nonprofit technology overall and say that we've moved from a world where technology, fundraising technology, is big, scary, and expensive and difficult to use, to a place where it is accessible and easy to use. And every member of your staff has access to it, because not only is that like a singular piece of software solving all of your problems, it's incredibly easy for everyone to use. And so this is part of, what we have in the present, and the future is an extension of this, furthering the ease of use experience for nonprofit leaders, nonprofit team members. And along the way, just looking at pricing, because that's a huge consideration for people, finding new ways to make access to this type of modern, forward-thinking technology easy. And I'll use ourselves as an example, because we follow, the pay-as-you-go model, where there's just a small transaction fee that's assessed. There are no other costs associated with it, which means that, it's great for large organizations, but thinking back to the smaller organizations who maybe were just using a Google spreadsheet or something, they also have access to that same software. And that is what excites me about the future, is the continued evolution of really good technology that is built to the standards of the for-profit world, but made incredibly accessible for folks in the nonprofit space.
Couldn't agree more. And I think I go back to where I was in starting off in my career. And, when I took over one of our organizations, they're like, well, you got to raise $15 million this year. How are you going to do it? And my answer back then was, let's hire a headcount, right? Let's get hired 2 or 3 people and just get them on the road to go out there and start doing face-to-face solicitation, those major gifts and everything else. We don't have that luxury today. It's hard to hire. It's hard to find good people. It's hard to find people that want to stay, as well as train them up, as well as find our data and the whole thing. I would take a pause and focus in on technology today. I think the technology, the efficiencies, the automations, the modern technology today is way better than what it was 20 years ago. And I just think through another 20 years ahead of what else is going to happen, for us. So I love what we do at Virtuous, where we only do 1-year contracts, because technology changes all the time. Like this ChatGPT stuff that we're not even talking about yet is revolutionary, and like what's going to happen next year is going to be something else out there. So I'm very big on leading in on efficiencies to help these nonprofits focus on impact and generosity.
Those are wonderful key takeaways for this session and to wrap it up. But I haven't seen any questions come through, but Erik, Nic, thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy days to come and just share this knowledge, these best practices to help other fundraisers as they start kind of looking and auditing and saying, hey, maybe this is the year we do make a change. Like, where do we get started? For all of our attendees today, thank you all so very much for being here today. If you have any other questions, we will make sure in the recap email that will be sent out tomorrow, not only will you get the copy of this webinar recording, but we'll also make sure that there's LinkedIn information for both Erik and Nic, so you can reach out to them with any questions that you may have. But again, thank you both so much for being here today. Thank you for everybody for joining in today. And I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend.
Thank you
for having us.
Take care.
Thank you.